Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. It's another weekly update, and today is a really stacked show. Before we get into it, there is something new on Patreon that I want to let you know about. It is our new postcards of the month. There will be one of these, unique every month. If you want to learn more, you can check it out down in the description below. Alright, so with that covered, let's get into the news. And I may as well just start doing Allied Race Watch, a twice per day news show that covers the one topic we're all hopelessly forced to talk about. But for potential allied races are the talk of the town recently, and it's for a mixture of reasons. Now, personally, I am quite suspect about all of this, but they do end up raising some cool lore, and a few of them be a possibility. First, we've got a tweet from the illustrious Ian Bates, also known as the Red Shirt Guy. Second, we've got some sightings from Zuldazar, and third, we've got some new data mined dialogue, which indicates a character pursuing a fresh group of allies. So we're going to kick it off with the LAYN. Yep, those guys from Wrath of the Lich King. So during Wrath, they served as higher-ups under the Lich King. They were kind of commander types, and since then it's been a little bit less certain with them, and of course Bolvar's energies initially had been split between maintaining his hold on the Scourge and not being essentially mentally destroyed himself. So it's quite possible that members of this group have really been a bit free as of late, and of course we killed many of them back in Wrath, including their leader, and then later on in Legion we killed Blood Queen Lanathel's daughter in Violet Hold, but there are, however, leftover LAYN who are not dead, and they're also unemployed. So Sylvanas, always the altruist of course, has seemingly decided to help them out, and a group of LAYN start aiding the Horde war effort against the Alliance and the Blood Trolls in Nazmir. Talanji is very suspicious, but Rolkan assures her that the LAYN will be welcome if they truly are friends, and, they'll pretty much get the boot if they prove to be a problem. Naturally, this has had many people excited about the idea of playing as a LAYN. This would pretty much allow for a long-requested character type, a Undead Elf, essentially a Dark Ranger. Here's the problem though, a Dark Ranger, yes, it's an Undead Blood Elf, but they also are a specific class. A LAYN is just an undead blood elf with some vampiric abilities, so they're easily suited to being a range of characters. They also have a pretty unique visual look, and their vampiric side gives them a little bit more flavor than just being an undead blood elf. Of course, Blizzard like to add an allied race when there is story and flavor behind them, so you know what, this actually would make a bit of sense to me. However, we do need to talk about Bomsamdi. He is the Loa of Death, and he's actually the spirit healer who picks you up in Zandalar. He's a bit of a morally grey character, but he is known to have liked Vol'jin, and there's some speculation about Vol'jin making a bargain with Bomsamdi, and Bomsamdi basically maybe having a problem with Sylvanas. Bomsamdi is basically a hungry boy. He loves souls. Sylvanas raising corpses kind of denies him souls, so there was some potential friction between these characters. Also, Bolvar was pretty miffed when Sylvanas bargained with the Valkyr. Of course, they left Bolvar's service, which made him less powerful, and according to Chronicle, Bolvar pretty much vowed to never let that happen again. Now, he's been making moves as of late, and I wouldn't be surprised if the LAYN, maybe if he has them there as a double agent or something like that. Now, as another aside, one has to wonder what Bomsamdi thinks about the Lich King, and what Bomsamdi thinks about Sylvanas and her Lich Queen-ish activities sometimes. So all of this could tie in, I see, a little bit into this LAYN storyline, and I do think it's more likely that the LAYN are just a plotline and not an allied race. But if they were an allied race, yeah, I'd be pretty much down with that. And I suppose as well, if Blizzard was to make them a bit of an antagonist group, maybe having them be double agents or something, I think that could allow for some cool character development from Sylvanas and maybe make her question her methods. Now, as for the other allied races, well, of course, I saw the tweet from Ian that was pointing out the Dark Iron Dwarf area in Borealis and how that makes sense, but then that there was a Wildhammer Dwarf one and a Jinyu one, which made a bit less sense. Plus, there are Hozen in Zuldazar, as well as quite a few new Hozen models in general. Well, I think they could just be there as traders, but I do think that Ian actually does make a good point. And Wildhammer, they wouldn't be a massive amount of effort for Blizzard to implement, and when you think about, say, the Jinyu, well, they're just kind of fish people, right? But if you actually look at them, they would easily work with existing character animations, because at the end of the day, they pretty much just are standard humanoids. They're just scaly. Now, I can see a sort of a lore justification for adding either group and having them join the war. The problem is, though, that Blizzard have recently said that Wildhammer are not planned, and that they they do themselves have a very solid plan for allied races, but that can respond to the community with, as an example, the Dark Iron Dwarves being implemented partially on the strong community feedback to have them. So personally, I think the Blizzard are doing this because they want to make Borealis and Zuldazar feel like real hubs of either faction, where even their smaller allies are represented and making the war feel larger, more to give the feeling of the factions truly being large alliances of many different groups, rather than to directly pump the game full of allied races. Okay, let's put on the brakes with lore and talk about quarterly earnings calls. Yep. Money and numbers, easily the sexiest topic, probably behind there with taxes. Anyway, ActiBliz has seen a bit of a drop in MAUs, but the number for us that really matters is the Blizzard MAUs. Of course, that's monthly active users, which has went from 40 million to 38. It's still a titanic number. As for why, well, I suspect it's just a seasonal thing. It's hard to tell. Those MAUs will be disproportionately skewed towards Hearthstone, I would imagine, because it's free to play, and Overwatch, given its really tremendous success. So I wouldn't really read into it too much in the World of Warcraft front. I think we would need another quarterly drop in Blizzard MAUs to see a trend rather than a blip. As for World of Warcraft, well, they've said that Legion is performing better than Warlords of Draenor at, the equal sort of stage of each expansion's life cycle, which makes sense. One could probably extrapolate sub numbers from this, but here's the thing. Subs are not that relevant to the revenue model of World of Warcraft anymore, and this ties into Blizzard reporting stronger user engagement with the in-game purchases, so basically boosts, mounts, character services. Look, you can almost be guaranteed that World of Warcraft is making more money now than it did back in Wrath of the Lich King because of the extra optional purchase things. I wouldn't be surprised if, say they lose 40% of subscribers, but they double their per subscriber earnings, which therefore leads to a net increase in revenue. Now, none of these numbers that I just said are real there. That's just an example of how subscribers are no longer really that good of a measurement of World of Warcraft's financial success because of how they have essentially expanded and diversified the game's revenue model. And then as for BFA, well, they said the pre-orders are ahead of plan. Honestly, I'm not surprised. World of Warcraft's pretty much always going to receive amazing pre-order performance versus the rest of the industry because of how tangible the benefits are, and I think doubly so with this expansion because of the allied race unlock. So yeah, I wouldn't be too worried about World of Warcraft disappearing anytime soon. And now that probably one of the most boring topics ever is done with, let's bounce back to the actual game. Blizzard recently posted that the pre-patch for BFA is about to hit the PTR. Well, they said soon, TM, I would imagine within the next 2 to 3 weeks, because they likely want the patch to drop 5 weeks before BFA's release date, and they'll probably want the patch to be in testing for like 2 months. What does all this probably mean? Well, we're likely going to find out way more about the burning of Teldrassil, as well as the outdoor world content component of the patch overall. That said, we are almost certainly not going to find out like the most important Teldrassil context. Why is this? Well, look, the Broken Shore cinematics, they were not on the PTR for Broken Shore way back in the day. Now, the content of those cinematics massively changes the narrative. I imagine that Sylvanas is going to look tremendously evil, but that there's going to be really important context in the cinematic itself. We'll only see the cinematic, therefore, at launch. I actually did see a really good, it was a conspiracy theory that basically the whole thing's a false flag attack by Gen Greymane to kick off the war, which I kind of doubt, but hey, it's a fun idea. Now, there was some data mine dialogue regarding the aftermath. It's not really spoilery, and it's in line with what we already kind of know. Sylvanas wanted to boot the Alliance off Kalimdor, kill a bunch of their leaders. Essentially, she wanted to have a defeat so crushing for the Alliance that it knocks them out of the war and it sort of allows for things to be a bit more solidified. Instead, what she does is she bloodies their nose and redoubles their resolve, ultimately leading to the attack on the Undercity and then the rest of the war. I think it's a decently interesting commentary of how we often think. You frequently hear people say like, oh, if only I could do X, if only this could happen. And then they would offer, in place of X, some sort of really drastic solution. And that, realistically speaking, would always end up being a messy failure. So it seems like Sylvanas being so idealistic about the prospects of knocking the Alliance clean out of the war is silly, and it's really what causes the war. Now let's polish today off with some more direct in-game topics. We've got great news for the Druids. So Druids are getting separate glyphs for their travel forms. Essentially, you're going to have extra entries in your spellbook for your aquatic forms and your flight forms and all that stuff. These are actually going to be passives, so the general shapeshift button is still what you're going to be using, but what matters is that each one of the passives in your spellbook can be glyphed individually, which means you can use multiple travel form glyphs at the same time, which is a really nice improvement for Druids, and I know it's something they've really been wanting for a long time. Blizzard have also clarified a bit of the new PvP honor system. Right now, it's all specific to your character, but in BFA, you just have account-wide honor levels. So the way that things are going to work is that Blizzard are just going to add up your honor levels, honor experience from all of your characters, and that's just going to be your account level. So basically, none of your Legion progress is going to be lost. Now, I do want to briefly update you on the beta goings-on. There's actually been extensive BFA raid testing, and Preach has got a brilliant video on the bosses, so I absolutely recommend that you check that video out. We then did see some abilities like Abyssal Strike and Disengage come off the GCD, and then Wowhead have recently posted a combined article that pretty much has what is on or off the GCD for each spec, so I think that's worth checking out if you're interested. Overall, I think that some classes don't feel great, and for me, some of the offensive cooldowns still feel awkward to use. A great example for me is True Shot on my MM Hunter. I hit True Shot, and then its duration starts ticking down, which doesn't feel great because I've got to then wait the 1.5 seconds before I can use my aim shot, which, yeah, it just doesn't feel like the pacing, I don't really like it. Now then, True Shot gives you a extra charge of aim shot, and if that was off the GCD, it would be pretty easy to use that, but because it's on the GCD, it does require you to pay a bit more attention to your timings and stuff like that, which honestly I don't think is that much fun because I'd rather just do what I want to do in my class and then pay attention to the fight. Overall though, I don't think it's a tremendous deal breaker, so we'll just have to see how it goes. Now I do have one correction from last week and the class changes video. I released it with no Arms Warrior, which is weird. My notes have Arms Warrior stuff, I recorded Arms Warrior stuff, I love the Arms Warrior, I just completely forgot to put it in the video and I only noticed it a day later. Quite odd, so here's what I would have said in that video. Alright, so Arms Warrior for me was a troubled spec in Legion that went through a lot of iteration over that expansion. Certain artifact effects and legendaries and talents did end up working out quite well with Legion, and eventually by the end of Legion a better playstyle was found from what was there at the start. So Blizzard have essentially taken the core of this playstyle and fully designed the BFA Arms Warrior around it. This has resulted in large changes to their talents, which has meant removing many boring or annoying to use ones, and then replacing them, I think, with ones that provide more just interesting options and stuff like that. The prevalence of the Colossus Smash window is also greatly reduced because the mastery has switched to Deep Wounds, so it doesn't affect the power of your Colossus Smash window. My opinions have not changed much since my dedicated Arms Warrior video, so I recommend checking that one out. One difference though since then is that the damage increase on Mortal Strike from Execute is removed from baseline, and it now lives on Azerite gear, which I don't really like, but you know what, it's not a massive deal breaker. So there you go, that's my thoughts on the Arms Warrior, and that's it for this week's update. Overall, some pretty interesting discussion about the allied race stuff. I also wanted to talk a little bit about Bwonsamdi, and just because Bwonsamdi is really tied into Vol'jin, and all of the death spirit stuff ties into what Sylvanas is doing and the Lich King and then the Sand Lane, so it sounds like there's a whole bunch of undead spirity dudes that are all coming together here in a pretty interesting manner. But anyway, that is it for this video, so thank you very much for watching. A tremendous thank you to everyone over on Patreon. Of course, on Patreon we now have the new Poster of the Month tier, as well as, you know, for the other stuff, you can get early access to videos, behind the scenes news updates, and I've been using a new feature called Patreon Lens that's been quite fun. Anyway, with all that said, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.
Thank you.